Hello, my name's Annette with Sunbeam Fabric Art. Today I'm going to take you through my pattern for the Black-necked Stilt. Okay, here is the pattern for the May bird of the month. This is a black-necked stilt, very neat bird. So this pattern, we've got 5 colors: black, I've got blue, I've got a gray here, but really this is for the eye. And you just want a black that's different from the feathers so that it does stand out that that is the eye. Gray kind of looks weird, but for the purposes of stitching this pattern, that's why I made it gray. Then we've got this peachy pink for the legs and white for also feathers. The next page of this pattern, let's take a look. Here is the sectioning. So we've got section A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and K. So this is one of the easier patterns I've done. I'd call it an intermediate pattern, and here are our instructions on how to assemble it. Then we've got 3 pages of pattern pieces. Now normally on my eye, I might print out one without numbers because when you get into the eye, you can't see the numbers, but in this case I felt like I could see the numbers, piece 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I felt like we can see these numbers well enough. I didn't need to reprint those out. This little weird seam allowance line, I don't know what EQ8 did there. It's perfectly straight on my pattern, so just ignore that. That is a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way. All right, let's get busy. All right, here are the fabrics I've chosen for this. This pink is going to be for the legs. Here's my white. Here are my 2 blacks. I've got this lighter black for the feathers, and I've got this darker black for the eye. I'm going to need 1 small piece for the eye. Then I was low on blues in my stash, so I went to Joann's and they were having a fat quarter sale. So I got some of these blue fat quarters for about $1.50 each, and those are going to work well for my bird of the month blocks. My first step in assembling my pattern is to cut apart the pattern pieces. Now for each section, I am going to cut out individual pieces that match that section, and then I make a stack of the pattern piece and the fabrics that go with that fabric piece until I'm all ready to go. I do tend to cut my pieces of fabric quite a bit bigger, especially for example the eye section. I cut those fabric pieces a lot bigger than the actual finished piece. As always, I like to start with the most complicated section first. For the eye section, the first piece is black, the second piece is white, so I'm going to take a piece of black, the one I chose for the eye, and I'm going to put a piece of white. Those will be right sides together. I will place those on the back side of the pattern. And what I do is hold this up to the light so I can make sure the edge of those 2 fabrics is overlapping my stitch line. Then holding that together, I take it to the machine and I am stitching a 1.8 stitch length on that stitch line, about 2 stitches before the line and about 2 stitches after the line as well. Next, I will fold down on my seam line. I will trim away any excess to eliminate as much bulk as possible. Then I will take that to the iron and I will press the seam open. Now it's time to add piece 3, which is the black of the feathers, so the different black. And again, I'm going to hold this up to the light. I'm going to put my black fabric right side to right side on the back fabric, making sure the edge of that piece covers the stitch line that I'm going to be stitching on, the line between piece 2 and piece 3. And for every piece, I stitch the seam line. I turn it over to the back side and trim off excess threads. Then I fold it on the seam line. I trim off extra bulk fabric on the back. Then I will press that seam open. We're ready to add piece 4, which is also black. So as before, we're going to find that seam line. We're going to put that fabric right side to right side on the back, and then we're going to make sure that our stitch line is covered so that that fabric is at least a 1/4 inch beyond the stitch line. And again, we're going to stitch the seam, trim off excess threads from the back and the front if you like. Then we're going to fold on the seam line, trim off extra bulk fabric from that seam allowance, then press that seam open. Alright, so you didn't have to sit here and watch me stitch for an hour. I skipped ahead, so I'm on piece 15 now. I just kind of wanted to just show you, if you're using light fabrics, it's very nice because you can see through the paper and the fabric as well. It's only when you're using dark fabrics that you kind of have to flip that edge down to kind of see if you've got a 1/4 inch on the other side of your stitch line. And continuing the same process, I stitch the seam line, I trim off excess threads, fold on the seam line, and trim off bulk fabric on the back side, and then I press that seam open. And finally, here we are at piece 17 on section A. I wanted to hold up section A next to the picture just so you can kind of see. Section A has not been trimmed yet, but you can see how it fits into the pattern. Very cool. All right, with section A done, I started on the rest of the sections, which were a lot easier than A. Some of them only had one piece of fabric and required no stitching. Once you have completed all the sections, it is now time to trim those sections. And for the bigger pieces, I just will take my cutting mat. I will use a ruler and cut on those not the stitch lines, cut on the dotted seam allowance line. And for alignment purposes and to eliminate bulk, some of the corners of these pattern pieces will have extra little divots to cut out. I guess that's the only way I can describe it, just extra angles, and do cut on that dotted line. For trimming the smaller pieces, sometimes I will just pick it up and use my scissors. All right, the last thing we're going to do is assemble this block. So following the instructions, I choose my sections and I put two sections together. In this case, I'm putting section A and B together. I take a look closely at where A and B are on the picture and see what pieces of the bird I need to line up. So I'm going to clip these two pieces together, and I'm going to open up the fabric while the clip is there to make sure that the fabric that needs to line up is actually going to line up. Once that looks good, I go ahead and stitch on the seam line. After stitching, I double check once more to make sure that it lines up just like I want it to. I tend to get rid of the excess paper as I go. I like to keep it on until I have stitched the seam line that I need to, but if there's excess paper that I don't need, when stitching this together, I like to go ahead and get rid of it. Some tricks I use for getting rid of the excess paper are tweezers for the tiny pieces. I also will use Scotch tape. I continued following the instructions, putting sections together, pressing those open until I had finished the block. Foundation paper piecing can be challenging, but I do find it fun to do. So if you don't find it fun, don't do it. But if you're like me, you like a little bit of challenge in your life. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you back very soon.